All right, let's jump right in. Healthcare organizations today are sitting on an absolute gold mine of data. But here's the real question. Are we actually using it? In this explainer, we're going to dive into how you can unlock the incredible potential of the data you already have, turning it from just raw material into your single most valuable asset.
We hear it all the time, right? We're in a data-rich environment. And, it's true. We have tons of it. But let's be honest, raw data isn't knowledge. It's definitely not insight. This quote just nails the problem. We've got all the puzzle pieces scattered everywhere, but without a way to connect them, we can't see the full picture of what's really going on with our patients.
So let's make this super real for a second. Imagine a patient has surgery on a Monday. Then, on Wednesday, they're rushed back into the operating room because of a complication. Now, in most of our EHRs, these are just logged as two separate, disconnected events. But you and I both know that's not the real story, is it? The real story is a concept, a clinical idea, a return to the OR for a related complication. And being able to capture that story automatically, well, that's where the real challenge begins.
Okay, so why is getting these kinds of answers so ridiculously hard? I bet this feels familiar to a lot of you. You have a critical question, something you really need to know, and trying to get a straight answer from your own data feels like you're navigating a maze, completely blindfolded.
Let's walk through the process we all know. And, well, the process we all know. It starts with a simple request from a clinical team. Easy enough. Then, the business intelligence team vanishes for weeks, sometimes even months, writing this incredibly complex code. Finally, you get a beautiful dashboard. Great. But what happens when you find something amazing, an insight you need to act on right now? Well, the IT team has to start all over again from scratch, rebuilding the exact same logic inside the live system just to fire off an alert. It's maddening. In this process, it just creates so many hidden problems. First, you're literally building the same thing twice, once for the report and again for the live system. The delay from when you discover something to when you can actually do something about it can be months. And maybe the worst part? Over time, the logic in the dashboard and the logic in the live alerts, they drift apart. They fall out of sync, and suddenly, nobody trusts the data anymore. It's a broken process that just doesn't scale.
There has to be a better way, right? Well, there is, and it involves a big shift in our thinking. Moving away from building one-off reports and instead building a foundational data asset using a tool you probably already own, registries.
Now, the magic behind registries is that they create something called a semantic layer. Okay, I know, it's a technical term, but the idea is actually really simple. Think of it as a framework that teaches the system how to connect the dots on its own. It's how the system finally learns that this surgery on Wednesday is directly related to that surgery on Monday, creating that meaningful story we talked about, the return to the OR.
And here it is, the most crucial point. You stop the endless painful cycle of duplication. You define your clinical logic, what makes a patient high risk, what actually counts as a complication. You define it just once inside a registry. And that registry becomes the one single source of truth for both your analytics dashboards and your real-time alerts. Everyone is finally working from the same playbook.
And just look at the payoff for your data teams. This illustrates it perfectly. We go from a monstrous 200-plus line query that's basically a tangled mess, a nightmare that takes weeks to write and breaks if you look at it wrong, to a clean, simple 5-line query that literally takes minutes. The registry does all the heavy lifting in the background, making life easier for everyone and creating a stable, reliable data source. But look, this is about so much more than just making reports faster. The real goal here, the real payoff, is closing that huge gap between gaining an insight and actually using it to help patients and make our operations better.
Here's another absolute game changer, data validation. So a clinician looks at a report and says, hey, this patient shouldn't be on this list. The old way, a data analyst spends days, literally days, digging through 15 different data tables trying to figure out why. With a registry, that same clinician can just open the patient's chart, pull up the registry editor, and in 2 clicks see the exact piece of data, the lab value, the diagnosis, that caused the patient to be included. Validation goes from days to minutes. And because validation is so fast, you can diagnose the root cause of your data problem almost instantly. Is the logic in the registry wrong? Okay, that's a quick fix. Or maybe it's a workflow issue. Are nurses not documenting in the right place? That's a training opportunity. Or is the system not even configured to capture the data? This gives you actionable intelligence, not just another report complaining that the data is bad. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This sounds like it requires an upfront investment of time and resources. And you're right, it does. But it is so important to frame this not as just another IT project, but as a long-term strategic investment in building a reliable data foundation for your entire organization.
Let this number sink in for a minute. Experts estimate that most health systems are using less than 10% of the capability of the registry tools they already own and pay for. That means over 90% of the potential to organize, understand, and act on your data is just being left on the table. It is a massive, untapped opportunity just waiting.
So, why does this matter so much? Because investing in this foundation pays incredible long-term dividends. You get one source of truth, finally ending those debates over whose report is right. You speed up the entire cycle from question to answer to action. You create clean, governed data assets that are ready for whatever's next, including AI. But most importantly, you empower your clinical and operational leaders to drive real improvement using live, trustworthy data.
So I want to leave you with this one final thought. Think of your data like it's a valuable natural resource. Right now in healthcare, we're kind of treating it like natural gas in the early days of oil drilling. It was valuable, sure, but it was just easier to burn it off, to flare it as waste. That's where we are with our data. We are flaring off massive amounts of valuable information every single day. The question is, are you ready to build the infrastructure to finally capture that value, or are you going to continue to let it just disappear into thin air?